Hi, everyone, and welcome back. This is the Academic Senate President's Report, here reporting on some issues that have come up since the late part of January 2019. First, I wanted to give you an update on the SEM project, and if you were at the last faculty training day on guided pathways, there was some conversation about what SEM is and how it's relating to some of the things that we're doing in terms of the academic areas of enrollment and pathways. And to recall, this is a team project that began, it's been in phase for the last year. And it basically involves a pretty wide range of people from student services, from the marketing department, from administration, from instruction. And this particular project has two coaches. And the two coaches are essentially guiding the team throughout the year as we work on the project. And the project has multiple components. In this phase, we're looking at how to make enrollment a strategic matter at the college. It's something, frankly, that a lot of us have been talking about since I can remember. I mean, I've been at LTCC for over 20 years, and I remember we've had these conversations way into the past in terms of how we can make the catalog, the schedule more meaningful for our students. So this is showing you just some of what we did down in Sacramento at the last retreat. And the Tahoe group, actually, there were quite a few accolades because it just seemed like we were further along in comparison with some of the other groups from the other colleges. So those are some of the images that you can just see here. If you have any questions about the SEM project, just let me know and I can fill you in on the details and what the future is and so forth. I wanted to mention one item from the last Senate meeting, which was on January 18th. And Melanie from the library presented and offered that the collection of VHS tapes is quite large, extensive, and probably too extensive given the lack of checkouts that is taking place at the library. I think she has a plan to whittle down the collections in terms of the media, and so perhaps you could just be on the lookout if she contacts you in your program to go over some of those holdings, because obviously some of those VHS tapes are no longer in use. And as a side commentary, JD was mentioning to me relative to B103 that as we transition from VHS and then we went into DVD and now we're in streaming, if some people are still playing things in classrooms on DVD, the question was, are some of the new classrooms able to project, load some of that content? And so that might be something to keep on track with as we focus on more classroom technology as more and more classrooms become smart classrooms. And it might just be something for us to think about. I know as the library is whittling down its collection, we might have some interest in terms of having a conversation about the types of media that we project in our classes. For teaching online, of course, in Canvas, and we have open resources that we're importing in, videos and so forth, that essentially is easily accomplished as long as you have the rights to play that video or you have the ability to load it in to save the link and so forth in your Canvas shell. So maybe a little more on that coming in the future. We'll just have to see, but I wanted to mention that because I thought that was an important instructional technology issue that came up in the January 18th meeting. So two items from the PAC meeting of January 22nd. And again, as a review, the President's Advisory Committee has most of the directors on campus. I sit on the committee as Academic Senate President. And many times, these are matters that are wide-ranging and relevant to, say, staffing issues across campus. Also, President DeFranco usually will preview what's coming up in the board meeting, which typically is often the same night of the PAC meeting. So on the 22nd meeting, we were introduced to Katie Myers, who's the new executive assistant to the Vice President of Student Services. So if you happen to be down at Student Services, you could say hi to Katie. She comes with a lot of experience, and it was great to meet her on the at the PAC meeting on the 22nd. The other thing I want to mention is this conversation about campus space. And I don't think I will say as much about this as I had planned. If you were at the last faculty training day, President DeFranco mentioned some of the efforts going on, and I think he highlighted all of these. But I'll just review these in case you happen to miss the Friday training day. I know some people are on leave, other people have Friday classes, and so maybe this will be a good review. I should say that this is all contingent on Jeff and Russie going down to Sacramento and really lobbying for the campus to get this revitalization money that's out there. And I guess if I understand it correctly, politically, Governor Brown essentially was sitting on this money. The hope is with the new administration, with Newsom in office, that hopefully this money will be released to the campuses. And I think what will happen is if this money is given to us, then all of these projects essentially could be approved. And of course, there would be a lot of planning and design at the level of trying to have conversations with faculty and discuss the needs and so forth. So first off, there could be modernization of the art labs as well as the science labs. And I'm not aware of what this would look like, but I know that in the art department, for example, there have been conversations in their comprehensive program review about safety issues and venting and all that kind of stuff that is really vital both to art and science. A lot of us who teach in classrooms about labs, we don't have these issues. And so that could be really important if we get this money approved. Also, you've had probably an opportunity to hear about conversations to move the DRC downstairs to allow for greater accessibility. And then lastly, this conversation about faculty suites, about movement of faculty offices. And again, the president mentioned this at the last faculty training day. And one concept could be to have faculty grouped according to meta majors. So that could be a possibility as we move along as a district into the new terrain of reorganizing ourselves from our department level into the meta major level of focus. And so clearly this is one of these issues that is dependent on, contingent on getting that money from the state. So we'll have to just wait and see what happens in the next part of the year to see if indeed that money is approved, and let's cross our fingers that it happens. Okay, a couple of updates from the Board of Trustees meeting from January 22nd, 2019. The first of these relates to winter closures. Let me just jump ahead here. As many of you know, the campus was closed on February 5th as well as February 4th. And the conversation that happened at the board meeting that the president offered was relative to how decisions are made about winter closures. And I was pretty happy to hear. I know a number of us live outside the area. Many people live in Myers, people live in Nevada. And if you're driving a longer distance to the college, even if the college is perfectly clear, and President DeFranco mentioned that indeed the maintenance operations does a great job in getting the campus clear, it doesn't mean that the rest of the city or the summit or wherever you're coming from is going to have that same level of plowing. And so he mentioned the fact that a lot of this is taken into account when a decision is made to close the college. And I saw some of my Facebook images of people up at the lake, and I was amazed to see just how much snow. Down in Nevada, we had 2 rounds of maybe 6 inches, another 4 inches over 2 days. But up at the lake, it was just crazy to see that. And it's really great for us. But obviously, in the short term, we're always concerned about safety and being able to drive and get to where we need to get. So it was good to hear this at the board meeting, because I think in the past, maybe there hasn't been as much clarity about how the college makes decisions in terms of closure when there is snow or weather. The other conversation was about the housing update. From what I understand, there is an effort right now through Russie's office from the logistical standpoint, and then Jonathan's office from moving students, say, from a list of desire to be in housing, campus housing, and then actually getting them housed eventually once we have housing. And so I think what's happening now is there are 2 properties that are being looked at. And if you'd like to know more specifics about the properties, this is available in the Board of Trustees agenda from January 22nd. Again, you can go to ltcc.edu, click on About Us, Board of Trustees, and then the Board Docs link will take you to these and many other meetings in terms of minutes, in terms of agendas, and so forth. So a lot more detail there, and I'm not going to cover that here, but basically 2 properties. One much closer to campus on Ski Run, the other one more near Emerald Bay. And so conversation, I think, is happening about how these already existing structures could be used for student housing and so forth. Now, the other project that is out there is the idea of having permanent housing on LTCC's campus. And that is one, if you've heard the president talk about this over the last couple of years, that requires really some investors to come in and to give some proposals. And so I think there's a process in place over the next year to get more information out there to the community and hopefully get some individuals who might be interested in a possible construction project and development project on campus. As you know, if you've been up at the lake for a while, there's a ton of bureaucracy, and so it's not always easy for someone to jump on board and get that interest in terms of partnering for housing at the college. The other big item, and this was a pretty big item, was Snow Globe. And Chad from Snow Globe, and he's now part of the MTV structure since the company was bought out by MTV, he gave a very lengthy update. There were numerous people from the city there, police officers, members of the city council, and so forth. So a lot of interest in this because this is one of these where there's partnership across quite a few entities, the college, the community play fields, the city, of course. And so there's a lot of coordination that happens behind the scenes. We often just see images or videos of Snow Globe and all the revelers and the music and so forth. In so many cases, though, if you put on a big event like this, it requires a lot of cooperation between a number of entities out there. And from what was presented, again, we have to wait until the thaw. And now with the last round of snow, we maybe have to wait longer. Well, once everything is thawed, we can have a look at the field and see the extent of damage and so forth. In previous years, there was some damage that certainly took place, and that's always a concern. They also addressed issues of sound abatement, and from what I can interpret, it sounded like they did a much better job this year. Every year they seem to be improving in terms of making sure that the sound doesn't carry so far and disrupt locals who might not necessarily want to hear the sound that is coming from Snow Globe. And the other conversation was about security. And it also appeared that security was much better this year in terms of coordination. A number of off-duty police officers were hired, and it seemed like there was a real good effort this year to protect campus property in terms of buildings and signs and everything else on campus. So I think it was a good update, and I know the board and the president will be taking a position on the future of Snow Globe at the college, and it's a conversation that happens frequently because it is such a big event and it potentially has a lot of good opportunities for the college to give us some exposure. It's also profitable in terms of the city and some of the local businesses and so forth. But there are also concerns out there in terms of some of those issues that I just mentioned to you. The faculty hiring prioritization was presented, and as you know, there are 4 faculty positions that are currently being hired, and I'll talk about this in a later slide in terms of some of the committee work that's coming up. There were 2 items on the board agenda. Again, if you want to look at the depth and the detail of this, I would encourage you to go to board docs. So one of these was the fee proposal, a 1-year approval to change the structure of the fees at the CDC, and I think the idea is to do this for 1 year and then to see how that works. And again, I think it's obvious, but CDC is the Child Development Center, in case you're wondering. And the second CDC issue was the approval of an MOU with the CEU, the Classified Employees Union, on the pay of CDC employees. If you are familiar with this, the CDC employees for many years have been paid on a different salary schedule. So this was an attempt to get them into compliance with other classified employees on campus. So those 2 changes were also noted at the board meeting. And then there was quite a bit of conversation about new curriculum. So in particular, Brad presented on the hospitality management program, the ADT and certificate, and this is very important, obviously, to have this in place so that when we hire our new hospitality management faculty member, they will be ready to go with the new curriculum. Also, there was the approval of the new wilderness degree in curriculum, and if you were able to hear Clinton's presentations at previous Board of Trustees meetings or curriculum meetings, then you know that he essentially revamped everything. If you look at the strikeouts, if you look at the new and the old stuff, it's a radically different program. And personally, I think it's really smart that we're moving in the direction of not just calling it wilderness, but wilderness and outdoor leadership. Having that leadership component, I think, is really strong in terms of marketing. And kudos to the curriculum committee, by the way. I've been to 2 curriculum meetings in the last year, and they have just been so busy with all the new curriculum, from new programs and program updates. I authored a new anthropology class, and many others out there have as well. I was aware also at the board meeting they mentioned there are some new organic chemistry classes, and then there was a conversation about music classes and specifically repeatability issues. And so it is a bit of a change in terms of how these classes are presented in the schedule. Again, you can look at the agenda to check out the specifics. And then lastly, the humanities degree was discontinued. If you're aware of the trends in terms of humanities, offerings have gone down with the exception of some core classes, and the number of students getting a humanities degree in the last 5 years is very low. And in some cases, I think we saw numbers of like 1 or 2. So that degree was discontinued, and I think it's part of a broader conversation that maybe we will have within the Senate as faculty about specifically what do we offer to our students? Can we offer our students everything? Just personally, for years, I've really supported with anthropology offering what's called a 4 fields degree. And lately, with the conversations about SEM and guided pathways, I've thought very seriously that maybe it's no longer valid or relevant for me to try to offer such a broad degree, and maybe I need to indeed eliminate that local degree and just focus on the ADT, which is a non-4 fields degree, which doesn't offer the 4 fields of anthropology. So it's a conversation I think that probably will be happening in the future. I wanted to mention also with hiring committees, I think everyone received their committee appointments. And by the way, if you didn't get on a committee this time around, I talked to HR. We have probably, there could be 4, 5, 6 more committees coming up in the spring quarter. If you are appointed to faculty hiring committees, some of those will be happening in winter, some of those will be happening in spring. So you can kind of just check your email because all those notifications did go out. Again, thank you for being willing to serve on committees. If you didn't get appointed to your favorite committee, then opportunities are out there for future hiring committees. I know that it's often competitive, that a lot of us want to be on certain committees, and hopefully everyone got matched up to a committee that will make sense. Of course, I like to say that with a lot of these committees, just like we experience with our tenure review process, if we're a faculty colleague, I think we're really competent and able to be on multiple committees in terms of understanding good teaching and faculty issues and so forth. So there's a lot of, I think, interchangeability on hiring committees because we realize you can't always get appointed to the ideal committee that you want to be on. If you have any questions about that, you can certainly ask me and John, and we can have some conversations about those committees. I wanted to mention for the Senate meeting on February 8th, 2019, which is coming up this Friday, a number of us may be missing part or all of that meeting. Jonathan, Student Services, has organized a guided pathways training. It starts at 7:30. I believe that's happening at the University Center. Katie Myers sent out invites, and hopefully you had a chance, if you plan to attend, to click on that invite, and you'll get the schedule and so forth. So I wanted to mention that if attendance is a little light this Friday, I think it's important, so I certainly want to attend and hear about guided pathways from the Student Services perspective. So that should be interesting coming up this Friday. I think a lot of us will be happy that we don't have a snow day on Friday, because you get a little stir crazy after a while in terms of just sitting in your house and trying to just keep shoveling that snow away and so forth. I wanted to also mention, in addition to having contacts with me, John, and Beth in terms of your Senate officers, you can look here on the screen then and see your 4 area representatives. Each of these has a co-rep, and because of sabbatical and Willie Brown reduced teaching leave program, you see that often this is in flux in terms of who's at the meeting and so forth. So these are the people you could reach out to if you have additional specific questions that come from one of the 4 areas that you are represented from. And then also our part-time senators Kata and Bruce. So if you have questions for them and you teach part-time at the college, their information is here. I didn't give you emails or extensions. You can get that all on the website. Find those contacts if you need to get hold of any of us on the Senate. As usual, if you have questions in these reports, I try to give you as objective a perspective as possible, my interpretations of what happens at the board meetings, at these other meetings. As always, if questions arise, you can contact me or any of the other Senate officers or representatives. I also encourage you again to look at the ltcc.edu website so you can get a sense of what is out there in terms of decisions, what the board is looking at, what other governance groups on campus are looking at. So I think that's it. I will probably have another one of these in February as we have a few more board meetings and Senate meetings coming up. And I hope everyone stayed safe during the long snow break here, Monday, Tuesday of this week in February. And hopefully you'll be able to get caught up on your classes or whatever it is that you need to do when you get back to campus. So I will talk to you soon, and thanks for listening.